Running a bonsai nursery has its advantages because I often get trees that have been grown by customers for many years and they think that they're making nice bonsai, but in the end these trees end up as just bushes. It is what we call raw material. It's in a lovely tokonami pot and he's made some attempt at carving. This is an English yew, by the way, Taxus baccata. He's done some carving. It's a very old tree. He's been training it for more than 20 or 30 years. And I think he's been trying to make it into a semi-cascade tree. But if you look closely at the tree, if you come close in, the so-called cascade part is very, very straight. And it's not really cascading. And there's no head. So it's just like a shaggy dog with its fur. The trunk is quite nice here, and it is, I think, what he would think is a semi-cascade tree. And I think the ugly part of this tree, if you prod a little deeper, is that straight branch there, and that's not doing anything. So there are, again, many options. You can tilt it. I think the bad part about this bonsai is that you can't see the branch structure. There's an interesting trunk here, but then you can't see anything else. It could be made into a taller tree, like that, or even that way, using this as the front. But trees like this, very often, it's not just a question of wiring the branches out, very dense, but it requires some radical action. One option would be to make it cascade more, but bending this trunk is well nigh impossible because it's so thick and old. If I even cracked it a little bit, I will try and do that. I could crack it like that and make it cascade down a little more, but I think this branch here is not very useful. Let's thin it out a bit. Trying to see if I can get a cascade. I've cracked that branch so that it is bending a little more like that. So that is one option. This is where I always see what different options there are. I don't want to run out of options. As you can see, I've removed a lot of foliage and I'm trying to see if I can make an interesting cascade tree from this. As with all these bonsai problems, every problem has more than one solution. So if it was you, you would probably see another solution in it, and you may criticize me for doing what I did. But I don't think there's any right and wrong, because every solution would turn out quite acceptable to the person who is doing the tree, or more importantly, the person who owns the tree. So as you can see, I've already removed more than half of the original foliage. I'm trying to see if I can get a cascade out of this tree. Let's see. I don't think it's very exciting. But for my money, I really think this should be a small tree. If it's a big tree, the beauty of the trunk is not shown to its full capacity or its full advantage. Usually, if you want to make the trunk look big and old, you should have thin branches and the tree should be small. With that big tree, this trunk is not shown to its best ability. Now let me try that bag trick again to see what would happen if I remove this completely. Can you see this is really ugly? It's a triple fork here. And that is really doing nothing. It's very, very ugly there. So let me put a bag over it. This is a famous bag trick. So what would happen if we made the tree a small tree, just like that? And then we can wire these individual branches and get rid of the rest of the tree. I think that is more in scale. So I think that has made my mind up. I'm now just going to remove the rest of the tree and see if I can get a more interesting result. But before I shorten it too much, I want to leave a lot of this in case I want to make gins out of it. And as you know, making gin means that you tear the branch If I don't like those gins, I can always remove it completely. But the main thing is to concentrate on this part and see what we can get out of it. I'll just do some very quick wiring to see what is in there. Right, as you can see, we've removed about 70% of the original tree. This is all there is. So all these thick branches, foliage, and we've got just one side branch as the new apex. But I'm still troubled by that. Do I want those as gins? I'm not sure. I'm not a great lover of gins just for the sake of making gins. I just may make a short gin there, or I might even just cut it off completely. But I will probably make a short gin. But those three-prong trident, like a trident fork as a gin, I don't think would do anything. Besides, it's at the back, so I won't use that. Maybe I'll take a quick decision. I don't like to dither around and be indecisive. I will just cut that and make it a single gin, And let's see where we go from there. So as you can see, what I do, I make a sloping cut. When you do a gin, you want to break the front, so I make a sloping cut this way. There you go. We can count the rings. There are quite a few rings there. And with my special gin pliers, I'll just curl away that bark. Some people take ages to make up their minds. I don't usually like to take too long in deciding, so I've done that. I will just narrow the gins by splitting it a little more. I remember showing this in my first and second book, written about 34 years ago. We've got to refine that, and I'm going to make a little curve there, so I'll take my time in wiring this, and the next shot you'll see is this tree repotted. This is a lovely pot, but this pot no longer suits the tree, so let's see what is inside the pot. As you can see, the roots are very healthy, and the tree will end up like this, potted at that angle. So I will take my time over the next couple of hours. I will wire these branches, and then you can now see there's a lot of movement in this trunk, lots of movement, whereas before there was no movement, so you have movement now. In fact, if I wanted to, I can even explore this. This is also a very nice front, but it hasn't got the carving that the original owner made, you see. But this is possible, and you can see this bit of gin. But I think I'll try and keep this because he's taken all the carving here, and this base is not bad. So we work on this. We've now got to the stage where we can do a bit of wiring to create the ultimate shape, but we still need to decide which we will use as the front. The way I decide on the front is usually on the interest of the trunk line. If the trunk line is very stiff and uninteresting, then I don't use that. For instance, a lot of people would like to use that as a gin, but I'm not enamored by this gin because it's much too straight. Even with carving, it may not come out so good. So I will probably hide the gin maybe at the back there, because this is a very interesting trunk line. You can see it's quite a nice S, and even this root is quite interesting. We can do more carving to enhance that. Let's look at the other side. Even that side is possible, but you lose the beauty of the carving that's already done here. So I would like to use this, if I may. As I say, this is a possible front, but I still prefer the other side. So you've got to keep turning it on. This is definitely not the front. It's not very interesting. This also not interesting front. This not so. So we come back and then we determine that this is probably the best front. So I've done a little bit of wiring. I will do a little more wiring to see what I can create from that. I find that it's quite useful every now and then when you're creating a bonsai. If you take a picture with your camera or your phone and then look at the picture, because that picture gives you a much better view and impression than your eye can visualize. So that's what I do from time to time. I look at the picture on the camera to see what is the best shape that I can get. So I'm trying to create that triangular shape like this and then wire everything in place. Remember that U's are very prolific, so you don't have to worry too much about cutting too much off, because it will soon grow. I think that needs to be wired down, so let's see what we can do with that. There's a lot of foliage, so I'm being careful not to trap too much foliage, although it doesn't really matter. The foliage will soon grow again, even if you trap it. At this stage, we're not doing any refinement wiring, we're just using the wire to guide the branches to grow in the right way. I think that is as much as I will do. I will now do a bit of repotting and see what I can create out of this. So I will now take it and start teasing some of the root out. But meanwhile, can you see we've removed, I would say, more than 90% of the original branches and foliage. Can you compare that? So you've got to be really bold when you want to create something which could turn out much nicer than the original. So let's look at the roots. Quite a thick root there, and it may not fit the pot that I will eventually put it in. So I'm trying to remove that with the lopper. There you are. bring that thick root over here. And then I can put it in a shallower pot. As you can see, this was the original pot, which is a hexagonal semi-cascade type pot. And because the style of the tree has changed, I don't think that pot is really suitable now. But what I can do is to put it in a slightly shallower pot at a slightly different angle and then see how it goes. This is not going to be the final pot, but at least it will be getting in that direction. So I will just remove some more root and put it in this pot. Now I have several options for the position in this pot. Remind you again that this is only a temporary pot because I will put it in its final pot after another year. So this is one possibility, making it lean over on that side. This root sticking out is quite interesting. Not everyone would like it. Some people would remove it completely and leave the tree like this. But to my mind, it's quite an interesting root, so I will leave it. And so this is one possibility. But I'm not too keen on this because it looks rather unstable. If I turn it round and just put it slightly like this, which was my original design, this root which is sticking out is less prominent and the tree is more upright, and then the position in the pot is more balanced. It doesn't look unstable. So this is the final position that I will put it in. And this is just a question of tying the tree in and filling the rest of the soil. I'm not going to waste your time showing you how to do this. So this is the tree which is complete, ready for its final putting in this pot. So this is what the tree finally looks like when potted up. I've potted the tree up and I've covered it with some sphagnum moss. As you can see, this is sphagnum moss. I like to use sphagnum moss just to keep the soil a bit damp but not over wet. And although it's a bit full, we can do a little more refining, but since we've just worked on the tree, I'm in no rush to do it. The other thing to note is that the gin has to be refined. Again, there's no rush to do it. It's better to let the tree establish before you do all this intricate carving. And there you are. I think it works quite well. The root which was sticking out is not too prominent. The detail of the carving, which was done several years ago, is quite interesting. I'll leave it. And if you can look at the tree, there is quite a lot of scope for more wiring, but I'll let the tree settle before I do it. And maybe one day this will become a very nice tree. But it will be probably purchased by another customer of mine. But I hope this lesson has been very useful in how we can do some radical transformation of uninteresting trees.